before I forget. All right, I'll be on your best behavior. We're being recorded now, okay? So does somebody want to share, like, what did you get? What should the council do if there were Kantians?
Uh,
Anybody? Go ahead.
Well, I know I got the wrong answer. So I initially thought they were supposed to just not demolish the house, but apparently it's built it somewhere else.
Okay. Why though? What was your why was that answer not correct?
Because it was only respecting Arthur and not the company, the construction crew, Mr. Prosser, the people that would use the road, etc.
Yeah.
So it was respect for person, not persons.
Well, right. And so the idea is, I think a number of people had a kind of similar issue. They're close. That's a close answer where they're like, oh, we're not going to demolish his house. Now, I'll tell you in a second how you guys got there, but I'll explain the correct answer. Well, one version of it, because most of us, when we redid it, we did kind of the similar four or five options, that we wrote on the board, which is, a lot of people were saying, demolish the house, build the road, don't demolish the house, build the road, go around or like compensate and relocate. Okay. So a lot of people had that as an answer, which is, I could see the reasoning behind it. So like a lot of things I want to always tell you guys, like when it comes to your content, I don't like absolutely destroy you like for being off, right? So when I'm grading, you think about it this way, like what's a C is the minimum expectation, right? Minimum expectation is you're going to work the process, you're going to get an answer, and you're going to get an answer that like looks close to the theory. And then a B is you do it a little bit better and you get a better answer or the right answer and you've got some issues with your paper. And then an A is like you got the right answer and you did the process right. Where most of you lost points is where you guys have been losing points on every assignment so far. You're not going into detail with the explanation part, right? So I wrote this comment on virtually everybody's paper, and I want you to consider this when we're going forward to a more substantive like evaluation paper. I asked you guys, I said, make sure in your conclusion, you like kind of demonstrate an understanding of how the process is applied. Most people wrote one thing, it's like, oh, it's universal, and then like you went on with explaining the situation. I didn't ask you to explain all the consequences of the situation, and that's what you guys did both times. Like, oh, this is the best answer because this person's affected, that person. What I wanted to see is the terminology from the application part of the process and show how that kind of like validates your answer, right? But sorry, for the most part, you guys got close. So like, somebody tell me why compensating and relocating is not the best Kantian option. Can anybody? Somebody else we're going to pass the sharing around.
That's not really what Arthur wants.
Yes, exactly. And so while we think it's a good idea to compensate him, because hey, the least we can do if we're going to bulldoze your house is give you money to buy a new house. If you look at the context of the case, like we know he doesn't want to move. He doesn't want to move so much so that he's willing to lay in front of a bulldozer to stop it from, crushing his house. So you're still exploiting him by forcing him to move out of his house that he doesn't want to move out of, and then you're buying him off. You know what I mean? With the payment. So that it's like you feel guilty, so you're going to pay him. You being if you were the government, right? I know you guys were looking out for him. But the end of the day is I want to look this thing up real quick. Because I want to show you guys something. My wife and I were talking about this. If you guys have ever seen like spite houses, let me see. I'm gonna screen share real quick. Have you guys ever seen any of this like kind of stuff? You see my screen here? Can you see? Wait, damn it. See, I haven't done this so long that I forgot how to screen share. All right. You guys see a picture of a bunch of houses?
yes.
You see how there's houses like literally in the middle of the road or roads go around houses? There has been like a long-standing thing of like people who just refuse to like move when they were building a road and just make them go around. Now it's ridiculous, but like look at this situation like right here. I mean, they kept their house and they still got the road. I mean, that's kind of crazy, but that's kind of the thing we're looking for, you know, in this situation with Arthur. What's the best way that everybody gets the benefit? And that's just to go around. Now, I know people are going to be inconvenienced. It might cost a little bit more. You know, the road might be a little less fast, but they can divert around his house and then everybody gets a benefit. Arthur gets to keep his house. The people get the road. You know, the council fulfills its duty to its constituents. Like, see, a lot of people are like, oh, they should vote. They should, the people vote. Like, if you know how it works, like the voting's already happened. At the point that the city decides to build the road, the people have said, we want a road. We need this. So now it's the government's job to provide that road, right? And so the best way to make sure everybody gets a benefit, whether it be the workers, the council, Arthur, is just to go around. Build your house around it and you still get it. It's slightly inconveniencing for some people, but a slight inconvenience doesn't mean that they don't get anything. Because remember, we're not worried about happiness here. This isn't like utilitarianism where all we care about is, are you happy? We care about if you've been exploited or not. And it's not an exploitation for your bypass to be maybe a half mile longer. You know what I mean? So it goes around a neighborhood or somebody's house. What I think started a lot of this is, remember when I said universality, I said you have to look at two things. One, it's black and white, right? We're either doing this thing or we're not doing this thing. And you have to look at the underlying thing that we're dealing with. So a lot of you said demolishing a house to build a road was not universal. Certainly is, which I know sounds crazy, but the underlying thing is we're building a road. So in that situation, if you say it's not universal, you say we never have any roads. Does that make sense? And that's why on some of your papers, I wrote comments, we need roads. We got to have roads. And I warned you
Okay,
guys,
gotcha.
and it's totally natural, and people do this all the time. You're looking ahead to the exploitation. Remember, I said, like, things can be universal as a whole, but on the case-by-case scenario, we don't like it. So universally, we don't want to ban books. But if those books have a content, like I've mentioned, child pornography, that's an exploitation. So we wouldn't like that book. Or you could argue like Holocaust denial, that has like a revisionist history that like demeans the, you know, struggle of an entire like group of people. You know what I mean? We could say that that's bad, that one book, but universally we like books, right? Because if we said, you know, that it wasn't universal, then you say we can't have any books. So a lot of you guys, I said the way you write it is important, because if we can't demolish the house to build a road, you're saying we can't build any roads. Because the underlying thing is we can't clear anything out of the path of a road, which we know is not true, because that's how roads get built, right? We run a bulldozer through a forest, knock down every tree in sight, and then we run a thing from here to Orlando, right? So that's where I think a lot of people, you know, just missed the mark just a little bit. And that's where, you know, you were anticipating the exploitation. Does that make sense? So you want to just universally, is this good or bad? If we only have two choices, we always do it or don't always do it. Because the universality of demolishing a house to build a road, what if the house is old? What if it's decrepit? What if it's unoccupied? You see, what if the person willing left? There's a lot of reasons why on a case-by-case scenario, demolishing that house wouldn't be exploitation to build a road. It just happens to be in this case. And that's why I think it's hard for people to kind of navigate at first, but once you do it enough times, it kind of becomes a little elegant, if you ask me, I think, where it's like, in a perfect world, would we do this every time or not, even if it happened to me? And that's the perfect world, hypothetical situation, right? Now, in the realistic world, do we like it in this case? Does that make sense? So that's going to help you guys for the assignment that's due tonight. You're going to pick the option you like best. And so if you like the Kantian approach, because somebody emailed me and they're like, can I use it? I think it might have been Mandy. They're like, can I use the Kantian, you know, answer even if I didn't get it? And like, yes, the whole point was always we're evolving, right? And so you just have to make sure that if you pick Kant's theory in this last assignment, that it's a Kantian option, because people do that. They'll carry one over that I said wasn't right, and I'll take more points off the second time than I did the first time. Okay. And so you could pick either option, and I don't want everybody to think you have to. There's not one I care about. Both options are good ethically. I know it like sucks for the guy, but like sometimes you have to, crack a little egg to make an omelet. So like, if we were building, an expressway from here to Tampa that was going to shave 40 minutes off a commuter's rides, and we had to go through one house to do it, deep in your hearts, a lot of you might be like, like you transfer to USF, you got to use that expressway. You might be like, well, it sucks for that guy, but you know what I mean? And technically it's an ethical answer because millions of people literally have access to that, and we put one person out. Or are you the kind of person who's going to say, well, maybe we just go around and make it a little less convenient, but like we still go around, right? Both of those, that's the exciting thing about this assignment. Both of them are correct answers. What it comes down to is what I always say is like, how are you going to defend it? Like, how are you going to explain it? You know what I mean? To make sure it fits with the assignment. Okay. So that's that last one. I think for the most part, like I said, you guys did good with it. A lot of people were just very close. There was like a lot of like 35s, which, as you've probably figured out by now, is like the highest you can get in a B without getting to an A. And that idea is just in good faith. It's hard for me to give an A on an assignment when you got the incorrect answer. But like, that's why I said like there's between a B, like a B is like, hey, the process looks good and we're a little off. And an A is the process looks good and we got the right answer. Okay. Any final questions on that? Okay. Now, something I do want to talk about here, just to recap, I'm going to share my screen again. The plan going forward. Most of you may have seen this or not. I sent an email out Sunday, my weekly email, kind of outlining what we're going to do, but I just want to chat about it a little bit. And then I do want to say something though, and I'm going to beat you up about this. The one thing I don't like harping on stuff, but the one thing I'm going to harp on you every single week is check your emails, but emails require responses. So a lot of times you guys reach out and ask me a question and I give you an answer and you don't ever respond back. I'm going to use Quinn as an example. Quinn is a great emailer, has a nice, very good introduction, asks me a question, I answer him back. He says, thank you, close the loop. So sorry to hopefully don't put you on the spot, Quinn, but it's good etiquette to close the loop. You ask a question, I give an answer. Tell me if that answer fits. Because a lot of times I'll say, does that answer your question? Or does that make sense? I don't really do the rhetorical question. I want to know, okay? So one thing is, I know that the majority of the class opened this email at least. But at the very bottom, please give me a short reply so I know you got this email and you are well. Because remember, guys, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks. I don't know if people, like, not to be sarcastic, people could literally be dead. People could be flooded out. People could be like without electricity. Like, there's a lot. I've worried about you guys the last 2 weeks, man. I was like, what's going on with my students? I've only heard from 7 people in the last 2 weeks, but I know that the majority of people clicked email. So either we got to this and we ignored it, which I don't think you guys are rude like that. I think we just opened it and didn't get all the way down. You probably said, long email, please read it all, and you got scared. But that being said, I'm going to go over it with you guys now, just to highlight so you know what's going on, since I didn't get all the replies, so I don't know if it's 100%. But again, that's just take your medicine. Read your emails, respond to emails. This is how the professional world works. So you guys got to get used to it, okay? So you'll notice there's a number of chapter quizzes, chapter 14, 16, and 22. I have adjusted those to December 1st, 7:59 a.m. It's like a Sunday. I just changed the date. I didn't change the time, deal with it, right? So chapter 14 was the one we were supposed to do last week for government ethics. Chapter 16 and 22, I think, are two of my favorites, and it really like stinks that we can't go over, but I think 16 is like human rights, and I think 22 is like environment, right? We just have to move forward, right? Like we just don't have time to catch up. I think what I had a choice to do was either overload you guys and catch up or just skip some stuff. And I decided to skip some stuff. And from the people I've heard back from, I think that works for a lot of people. So hopefully you guys don't care, right? So what this is so this way you don't have to like lose your pace from the quizzes that you've been working on, you know, because we got some due next week. I've given you the rest of the semester to just catch up on these 3 quizzes. I still want you to do the quizzes because it's 10 easy points, and I still want you to at least be familiar with the general discussion of those ethical topics. So just do those when you can, okay? The sources assignment for the critical book review that was going to be due like last week, I nuked it. We're not doing that. It's only 25 points. It was just to make sure you were heading in the right direction with your research. Instead of focusing on that, we'll just do the outline that's due next week, Friday, I think it is, right? And you're gonna have your sources in that anyways, so we're just gonna move forward. Okay. The one that I think you guys are probably most disappointed about, is that I've just decided not to do the midterm. So I just took that off. We're not gonna worry about it. It was one of those things like we didn't get time to prepare for it. Then I was gonna let you guys do it in class, and now it's like, what's the point? I don't like midterms anyways. I reached out to somebody I can push the blame on in the department. It's like, what if I just don't do it? And he's like, that's fine. So we're not gonna do the midterm. Okay. So what this means now is your class is now out of 875 points instead of 1,000. So what I did is I just exempted those from your grade book. So in the grade book, it'll still like show 1,000, I think, but like those have been removed. The way your grade works is like your grade percentage is always going to look a little weird until the final end. Sometimes it'll look lower. Like years ago, I had a girl, she was trying hard, struggling. She had a D every single day of the semester and she wanted to drop. She's like, I just need to see. I'm like, you'll get there if you just keep doing it, I promise. She missed some early assignments and was playing catch up, right? And I told her, trust me, if you look at the numbers, it'll work. On the last day of the class, she finally got a C and she's like, oh, you're right. I'm like, yes, because you have to look at total points earned because the percentage is going to be a little off because it's like once I grade something, it puts it in your grade. And then this is like what percent of that grade do you have, right? And so you just got to keep in mind now that the class is going to be 875. So like an A is like 787.5. And a B is like 700. And a C is like 612. So if your only goal in life is to get like a C, you got to hit like 612. Okay. What you'll see here is talking about the extra credit. We haven't really had anybody do extra credit yet, and that's fine because I think this is now the point where people really start doing it because you don't need anything else from me and from class lectures to do the assignments. So like one of them is you can put one of the other theories against the case that we just did and see if it gives you a different answer or if you like the process better. And that's like, I think, I forget how many points offhand, like 30 or 40, I don't know. And then there's one from the hot topics chapter where you can just look up an article about one of the hot topics, kind of do a little review thing for it. You get extra credit. There's events that are going to be coming up. There were events that I was going to tell you, but they all got canceled in the last 2 weeks. But when we have on-campus events, or Good Life series events, I'll let you know about those. And you can do those where you attend it and then you do like a 250 word, like like informal write-up about like the experience or whatever. So the point is out of 1,000 class, the 100 points of extra credit would usually be like 10%, like one grade level. Well, like technically now it's going to be like 11.4%. So it's not a huge growth, but you'll get an extra 1.4% boost in your grade to get you over that hump, that next level, to that next grade level. So you can improve over a grade level just by doing extra credit. Now, I think I probably said this at the beginning of the semester, and I'll say it again now. At the end of the semester, it inevitably always happens that somebody emails me the last week and they're like, what can I do to raise my grade? The first question I'm going to ask you is, how much extra credit did you do? And if the answer is none or not all, there's no real conversation to be had at that point. Because this is why I cut the extra credit off a week before the end of the class. It's 2 reasons. One, I want to grade it before the final project, so you know exactly how well you have to do on the final project to finish where you want to finish. And 2, I'm not interested in rewarding somebody who was, you know, for lack of a better word, lazy for 16 weeks, and then in the last night decided they want to do all the extra credit and keep me up till 3 a.m. grading extra credit. That's malintent, right? You know, I'm a big on intent. Show me your intent. If you're working, you know, through the process, you're doing the extra credit. Now I'll tell you, if you turn in all the assignments, you do all the extra credit and you're still short, then we could talk about if there's a way to get you over the hump. But I'll also tell you, if you do all the assignments, do all the extra credit, you won't be short, right? So, but the first question I'm going to ask you is, how much extra credit did you do? And then you might get that snarky answer. Well, go back in time, do the extra credit, answer all these emails, you know, all these things. So like, I'm trying to work with you guys throughout the semester so that way we don't get to this point where we have to have an awkward conversation on the last day of class about why you're not going to pass. I don't foresee that happening. It's very rare when it happens. It's an awkward conversation I don't enjoy having, but I have to protect the efforts of my other students, which I know like sounds weird to people sometimes, but like there's somebody in this class that's going to work hard, do the best they can, and get a C. And that's fine. I don't like the stigma that follows C students in college, because like there's this stigma like if you got a C in a class that you're like lazy. No, if you're lazy, you failed the class. There's plenty of classes. I mean, like I have a few math classes, my Spanish, things that I was just not good at. You know, I got a C in, and I'm like proud of that C. I'm like, hey man, I can order a taco at a restaurant, and like that's my C. Like, you know, it was hard for me, right? But what that means is for that person who like legitimately works hard and gets that C, I can't give somebody that same grade that didn't work as hard. And the same thing with like an A. If you're trying to get bumped into an A, because like a B is a great score, a great grade. If you're trying to get bumped into A, I have to look at you under the lens of the students who legitimately earned A's, because there's at least 1 or 2 every semester that earn an A and never do any extra credit. So like that's like my baseline. This is what an A student looks like. Do you compare to that student, or were you somebody who at the last minute turned it, you're a few percent short and you want to charm me up to the A, right? You guys got to remember, I get evaluated on how many of you guys get C's or higher, not how many of you guys get A's. So the A is something I have to protect, because otherwise, why did you give such a high effort for the A? You know what I mean? And then I just gave it to somebody else. So hopefully that makes sense. If any class, right, in an ethics class, hopefully that makes sense, right? Okay, so finally, and then the decision-making, evaluation, reflection assignment, I push that to tonight, okay? This one I'm going to be loose on. If you ask me before the deadline tonight for an extension, you can have it. You are going to tell me when you're going to have it by, though, if that makes sense. So like whatever you tell me, because this is like this project's over and done with. So this is the last one. There was extenuating circumstances. I want it to be quality. I don't want it to be rushed. You know, this is why I've been saying if you can get it done tonight, it's better, because then you're not working on this next week when you should be working on your outline. But if you need the time, let me know. And then the way it'll work is you'll ask for an extension and I'll tell you how much time you need. And then you'll tell me when you can get it to me by, and that will be your new deadline. Now, the way I am though, tell me, don't shortchange yourself. Because if you tell me, hey, I'm gonna get it to you Friday, and then you don't get to me Friday, that's it. You see, we can't just be like evolving this deadline for a year, okay? So think real good and hard, legitimately, like how much time you need, and then I'm gonna hold you to that's our new contract, right? We talk about these agreements, these contracts. We're gonna make an agreement between you and I, and at some point I'll have to hold you to something, right? So that's how that's gonna be, okay? Any questions on that? Any questions at all about any of this stuff? Does anybody want to take the midterm? You guys really excited for it?
I wanted to take it. I copied my notes again so I could read them better.
Well, then you did it for the edification of knowledge, I guess, right? But you know, it is what it is. I'll tell you, to be honest with you, like the midterms usually pretty easy for most people when we do it, but we don't have time to prepare for it. And it's like if you looked at it like dry, it would be confusing. But usually what I do is we do a review that's basically almost just like it before, and then you have the weekend to look at it, and then you come in. But if I just like gave it to you guys, even with in class, like some of you would still probably like spend a lot of time looking things up because you weren't prepared for it, and like, I don't know, we're just gonna skip it. To me, the test is more these assignments because it's about applied ethics. So it's like I'm asking you to apply, you know, ethical thinking to a case like that. That's more relevant to me than, you know, the test itself or whatever. Okay. So, all right. Are we still, is my screen share still on the course? Can you guys see the course?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I got the dual monitor here and I always forget like what I've got going. So now the rest of the time here, we're going to talk about this paper. Now, if you look at the calendar, so part of the reason why I thought the best bet was to just nuke the last 2 weeks and move forward is we can actually just catch right back up to where we were. So now this puts us at week 10, right? We should have been doing the human rights and environmental ethics, and I love these topics, and hopefully you'll enjoy reading about them. They're really fun to discuss. We really get more into the John Locke rights, like life, liberty, property, and how that's like influenced the UN's declaration of like human rights. So it's really interesting. But if we look to next week, then we'll talk about, you know, war, terrorism, technology, humanity. It's still a pretty cool one too. A lot of these topics, I picked them because, you know, there's a lot in the book, but these are hint, a lot of the topics that are in your books that you're going to be writing about, issues with the government, issues with human rights, the environment, war, technology. So like the idea was we were going to discuss these things while you guys were thinking about your book review, but we're a little bit behind, right? But that means next week the research thing outline is due Friday. And I really want to make this due Friday because that gives me the weekend to grade it. And then you guys will have it back. Because if you look, the next week, we're closed on that Monday. Or that's a Tuesday, sorry. So we have the Monday and the Wednesday. That week, I like to actually talk about the paper, teach you the paper, so to speak, get everything we need to do ready so you can have that paper done the next week. Does that make sense? So like I really want to have that time because if I don't have the weekend to grade it, then I'm grading these throughout the week and you have less time with the feedback, you know what I mean, to prepare for your paper. So let's hold that, okay? Because then this week we will basically, and it could have been a catch-up week, but I want to keep it for talking about the paper. Maybe on one of those days I might kind of like summarize some of those other topics. We'll figure it out. But then the next week we do the workplace ethics. There's nothing due that week for that assignment other than a quiz, but that's when your paper is due on the 8th. Okay, so be ready for that. Then the next week we have the code of ethics assignment, which is pretty easy. All your extra credits due that on the 15th, right? And then this is where it gets weird. So like right before Thanksgiving break. So I don't know if it's going to change, but my original plan was to not come back after Thanksgiving break because it's finals week. So like this is Thanksgiving break, and then we usually come back for like a day. I want to try to finish up with the presentations like in this week, but we'll have to see. We might have to do one day because of the way things are working out, but we'll see. But that's the plan going forward. So like we can actually slide right back into the schedule without having to, play catch up. Okay. Because I know this is a stressful time for you guys. It's a stressful time for us. I don't want to put myself under that pressure. I don't want to put you under that pressure. So I'll use my academic freedom to just eliminate assignments. Okay. So speaking of the outline, so we're going to go to course content. If you haven't looked at it yet, that's fine. We're gonna see it now. We go to the critical book review, and it has the individual modules. We did the selection. We skipped the sources, so we're on this one, the research outline. Now, I don't want you to be overwhelmed about it. This is where it talks about like the instructions, but if you just follow the outline I gave you, so you go to the template, you download it, it should be pretty like low maintenance here, right? So like, let me show you. Where is it? Here we go. I have to like slide you guys around a little bit. Not that you know, but I have the window open with all you guys, and then on one screen, and then the main screen is where the Word document opens. Okay. You guys can see the Word document now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I've been doing, look, I'm less worried about you guys learning how to format things and versus filling things in, right? So just fill in, right? You put your title of your novel here, you put your name here, change the date, and you're rolling, right? Same thing, title of novel here. Now, in the introduction part, I just want you to provide a very brief summary at this point. You don't have to go crazy, of the plot of the novel as it pertains to the moral issues that you're going to talk about. I don't want like, there's this guy, Fred, and he's got a friend, George, and he's married to a woman named Mary, and they get into mischief. It's not that kind of review. I want you to summarize the book as it pertains to the moral issues that you present in your thesis and that you're going to talk about in the book. I'll show you what I mean about the thesis in a minute. But you're going to state the thesis at the end of that intro. Some of you, I know you might be in Comp 1 now, or you've had it, or you're in Comp 2. The thesis, look, it's just the most important sentence of your whole paper, is what I used to tell people when I was a writing tutor, right? So if I snatched that one sentence out of your paper, and I took it in the other room, and if my wife was here and I showed her just that one sentence, she would know from that one sentence, without knowing you, your paper, or my assignment, what your paper was about, right? So this would be like something like, in Cat's Cradle, Kurt Vonnegut uses blank, blank, and blank to show blank. And I stopped there because somebody's got that book, and they're like, yeah, they're getting all excited, right? But three moral issues, 1, 2, 3, to show what you think the ethical moral of the novel is. Now, the moral is, what do you think Vonnegut wants us to learn from this book? Now, what's really cool about literature analysis or any kind of art analysis is don't panic, okay? Don't overthink it. You're not wrong per se, because it's like art is in the eye of the beholder, right? So like, essentially, if you can justify what you're saying with research and stuff from the textbook, it's right? So like, you pick out 3 things that you saw. There's way more than 3 ethical issues in all of these, right? And then you talk about the moral that you're supposed to learn. There's probably multiple morals that could be learned from most of these books. Now, what I mean about ethical issues, we know from chapter 1, we know that an ethical issue is an issue where we're concerned about moral right or wrong. So if you're reading in the book and you read something and it gives you the ick, that's a moral issue. We know this. Like if you're like, oh, you know that there's the reason why you're going is because there's a question of good or bad there, right or wrong, right? So it could be that. It could be things that are mentioned in the chapters. Many of these chapters have it. So like, we're not there yet, but if your book's about technology, jump to the technology thing, right? There's something that we talk about a lot on the ethics team, the precautionary principle, right? It's in that chapter. Many of you, it might fit for your things, where when you create a technology, you have a duty to like be open and honest about any potential of harm this thing can do. So a lot of these AI things, they're not thinking about the potential for harm. Or Jurassic Park. Somebody's got that book, you're going to get a free one. One of my favorite parts of that book is when Ian Malcolm says, you got so caught up, if you could do it, you didn't ask if you should do it, right? And so those kind of things, or any of them, right? They could be big or small. Now, what you're going to want to do for the research, when we talk about in a second, you want to like distill this down to short little terms or phrases. You have to think about this. This is where a librarian can help you, because if you guys recall, if you meet with a librarian between now and this assignment being due, you get 5 points extra credit added to your paper. And then before the paper, if you meet with a writing tutor to have them look at it, 5 points extra credit added to the paper. So we talked about before, that's 10 points extra credit added to a 100-point paper. That's like a grade level boost for getting that, okay? They can help you with your search terms, but think about things like, all right, you're going to have some of these books have kids fighting wars. What do we call that? What would like a topic we might search?
Exploitation?
What? Well, that's certainly,
Exploitation.
it's certainly an exploitation. What else? What do we call that?
Child endangerment.
What's endangerment? But have you guys ever literally heard of just child soldiers? So like if I'm going to do a research topic, there are places in the world where children are used as soldiers. And a lot of it's exploitive and endangerment and coercive, and they even get drugged up sometimes. So the idea is you're going to take a book that was written maybe recently or decades ago, and you're going to research it in the real world. So you'll research child soldiers as a topic, and you'll find articles about the ethics of like child soldiers. Does that make sense? A lot of you guys are going to have issues in your book where it's like rich people are doing something to poor people. What do we call that other than exploitation? Because it is, but what could we search as like a topic? Because exploitation is going to be real broad, but like what do we call that when there's a division between the rich people and the poor people?
Segregation.
What?
Segregation.
Yeah, but like what do we specifically
Classism?
call it? Classism. Who said it? Yeah.
Me.
So when you have conflict between classes, so I'm just spitting them out. I'm gonna help you guys. So if you got Hunger Games, if you've got A Long Walk, if you've got The Running Man, and other books, this is rich people exploiting poor people for entertainment, right? So even though there's 30 different books, a lot of these I picked on purpose because a lot of them are similar topics and themes to research that we talk about. You see, so like everybody, I think everybody's seen Hunger Games, but like the rich, wealthy people use the poor people to kill each other for entertainment. You see what I'm saying? So that's classism. That's exploitation. What else is that? When you have, you know, sports that are done to the death, what do you call that? Or very violent. There was a
Gladiatorial?
What?
Gladiatorial?
Did anybody see a particular kickboxing movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme from the 1980s called Bloodsport, right? So like, well, that's not the kickboxing one. I think it's called The Kickboxer. This Bloodsport's just where they have like this kumite where they fight and people could die. Bloodsport. That's an ethical issue. Now, do we do it with humans all the time? No, but with animals, with all kinds of stuff. But what's the ethics of blood sport? You can even look at where people criticize UFC and boxing for the ethics of it, because the point of it is to inflict as much damage, physical damage on your opponent as possible till they quit, right? What's the ethics of that? Now, some people say, hey, they volunteered for it, but what's the ethics of us using that for entertainment? You know what I mean? So these are the kind of things that you can look up. There's a lot of environmental issues. Like if you got Ready Player One, that's huge environmental issues. You know, there's a few others with that kind of stuff. There's things with like religious implications. There's things with like sexism, misogyny, you know what I mean? There's rape, there's murder in a lot of these books. So like pick your poison, right? Now, it's easy to go to the negative ones because the negative ones stick out. But I always say they don't have to be negative ethical issues. You could see positive ethical examples in your book, which is really kind of cool because in some of these books, they're up against like extreme hardship, and yet there's still people trying to do good, trying to do the right thing in the face of the fact that like they're the only person in the whole book that's trying to do the right thing. Right? That's an ethical thing, what you could talk about, right? You could talk about theories. So if you see the exemplification of like utilitarianism or egoism, it's very loose, okay? The only thing that you can't write about is stuff in chapter 2. Chapter 2 is moral development. We're talking about ethical stuff, okay? Do not turn this into a psychology paper. At least once a semester, somebody turns this into a psychology paper. We are not talking about psychology. That's great. You'll write that paper one day for a psych class. We are talking about ethical issues, moral right or wrong. So like you could do something like so-and-so in their book, such and such uses classism, blood sport, and exploitation to show how the rich, see poor people as their sources of entertainment or something like that. Now, I know this is recorded and people are going to go back and look at it. You cannot use the things I say word for word. So that can't be your thesis. I'll recognize it when I read it. But like, that's the idea. Okay. Is everybody clear on that? And I'll show you that in a minute. But are there any questions so far on that? No? Okay. So when you see the outline here, you do that introduction, you state that thesis. And remember, this doesn't have to be super perfect. You're not like married to the research that's in here. You're going to show it to me and I'm going to give you feedback like, hey, this is good, or this is what you need to change. The idea though is don't blow through this. If you put a great honest effort into this, the paper is mostly done. Does that make sense? So like, don't blow through this and get to the paper. The idea is once this is here, the bulk of your paper is there. Because what you'll do is you'll do this 3 times for each body paragraph. So in the paper, these will be in 2 separate paragraphs, but we don't need to do that on the outline, okay? So for the body, you're going to just write 1 sentence. Each of these are 1 sentence each. We're not asking you for paragraphs. Don't write paragraphs. Write 1 sentence that introduces the first ethical issue through the thesis. To begin, so-and-so in their book such and such uses classism to show the exploitation of poor people. That's all I'm looking for. Don't overdo it, okay? Then you take a direct quote from the book that shows that issue of the classism, okay? Does that make sense? Then you get a support paraphrase from your article that's about classism, right? Make sense? You with me so far? And then you write a sentence that shows the connection of how the two are related. So like from the book, got Hunger Games, show some direct quote about the rich people crapping on the poor people, right? And then you show something from one of your articles that you found that talks about why classism is bad or whatever. And then in your connection sentence, you just say, so, this shows that like the people at the Capitol were doing this to do that, blah, blah, blah. Make sense? Direct quote from the book, paraphrase from the article, your sentence that shows how they're related. Make sense? And you do that twice for each ethical issue. So then another direct quote. I do it twice just to make sure you're really thinking about it, not just a one-off. So another direct quote, another support paraphrase, and then show how they're connected. Okay? Direct quote from the book. So you'll have quotation marks around it. You'll have the parenthetical citation, author, comma, year, comma, P for the page, 14, whatever, right? To show the direct quote. The support paraphrase from the article, put it in your own words, and then just the author year. We'll go over that Monday. I'll put it on the board for you and everything, and we'll talk about it again. But we have the APA module that'll help with that, okay? Does that make sense? Because I do want to get to the research. But do you guys understand basically what you're doing? So then another one for the paragraph, another one for the paragraph, and then the conclusion. Just restate the thesis and briefly state whether or not we see these issues in society today. Here, I want you to be specific. I want you to say, and you don't have to do like research for that part, but like, do you see this or elements of this in society, or do you see where we're working towards it in society? Does that make sense? Don't do the thing that people do where they're like, this could be seen in society today. Okay, where? You know, give me an example, right? Does it make sense?
Mhm.
So we good on that? I'll touch more on that Monday, but I want you guys to see this in case you want to work on it before then, which I would highly, highly recommend. This is a good time to make an appointment with tutors because everything got nuked. We're all remote this week. Pretty much everybody's online with probably open availability for appointments. So, you know, if you need help, go for it. We're all just sitting around at home right now waiting to help somebody. But I want to talk about the research now. Now, some of you might have been to the library online, some of you might not. You can get into it a lot of different ways. I think one of the easiest ways is to just do it from the course itself. So put it in student mode for a second. It's just loading up because it's slow. All right, come on. We're just waiting, spinning. Come on, dude. There it is. Okay. So when you go to the course homepage, this is any of your My Courses, okay? You'll see that there's these tabs across the top, right? So this one says library and tutoring. So when you click on that, this is where you make your tutoring appointment. So like if you want to meet with that librarian, you go in person or online. This week it would have to be online, right? You can go to research. Okay. And then this is all of us. See, we're all just waiting to help you. Joy, you guys have seen her. She's on campus. She's familiar with the assignment. Obviously I'm familiar with the assignment. I know for some people it's weird. Please don't think it's weird to come to me. Like I put the tutoring hat on. I'm not the teacher. I'm not going to be judging you. I'm not going to hold it against you if we talked about something in the session that you didn't do in the paper. I can separate the roles. I'm just here to help you with the research. But all the rest of these people, like Cassie has seen this assignment before, and all the rest of them are just really good with research. But you know, you pick your day, you pick your time, and you just book it. And if it's online, they'll send you a Zoom link and you'll come in it just like this, and we'll chat. Or if you do it in person when we're back next week, it's the same thing, but it just tells you to go to the library. So use those links to get you where you need to be, right? You can do that. So, but what I want to show you is when you're at library services, go to the online portal. And so then you got to sign in apparently. What is this? Why isn't my sign in saved? Probably because I have two web browsers open right now. And I usually use it through the other one. Okay. Oh, now I gotta verify through text. This is the worst. Hate this. Save it. Do you guys have to do that? Do you have to like verify with codes and stuff when you sign in? It's like a worst.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's at least it's better than using the Microsoft Authenticator app. That thing is annoying.
Yeah.
I had them do it so I could just be texted because yeah, no.
Yeah. Have you guys seen this before? Right? The online library.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the kind of quick and dirty of how I show people how to use this. Some of the librarians and I kind of go about this differently, and it's neither right or wrong. Both ways work. They'll get more technical, but I like to think, hey, if I'm a student and I'm just looking at this thing for the first time, like how am I going to want to use it? First thing you see on there's a big old search bar, right? So your natural inclination is going to be to start searching, and that's fine. We're going to use that, okay? But what you have to understand, what you're searching is literally everything we can get you access to, millions of things. Articles, videos, audio files, ebooks, physical books, newspaper articles, all kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to do is show you how to use filters to make that easier on yourself, okay? So one thing is, and it says in the instructions, I want to make this clear because this happens at least once or twice a semester. You are not researching your book. Some of these books will be researched in there, like The Giver. People have written about The Giver a lot. It's a great book. People have written about, you know, I always see ones about like Handmaid's Tale has been reviewed in there, obviously. Parable of the Sower. Some of these like classic books have articles on them. I'm not asking you to research your book, and if you do, I'm going to tell you to do other research. Because some of these books won't have research in them, some will. What I'm asking you for is to research the topics in the book and use your book as like the case study where you're comparing your book to like the real world discussion of these topics. So we'll use classism. And if this is one of your things, you better take good notes, right? So I'm going to search classism. This is a very big topic, right? So when I search it, I get 78,572 things about classism. And a lot of people will start jumping in, and that's kind of going to be laborious, right? So I want to show you a few tips. And if you take notes of this stuff, it's going to help you out a lot, not just for this, but like anytime you're doing research in this. First thing I want to do is you see where it says advanced search. Let's click on that. So classism and, well, what class is this? Ethics. So maybe we'll narrow it down. This is what we call a Boolean operator, okay? You don't have to remember that unless you go to library school. Just remember what it does. Essentially, these are conjunctions. And if you guys ever remember that old Schoolhouse Rocks, conjunction, junction, what's your function? They hook up words, phrases, and clauses, okay? So and adds two things together. Now, it's a little counterintuitive. So if I'm saying this and that, classism and ethics, it actually narrows the search because these words I'm putting in are what we call tags. And it used to be these word nerds that would read through everything and tag it to topics. Now they probably use AI algorithms or whatever. But somebody went through and they tagged this article with the word classism, and that's a thing you can search. If you notice, I didn't search rich people taking advantage of poor people. It's not going to find that. This doesn't work like Google. Google works intuitively with human language where you can put a whole sentence in and get an answer. So I tell my wife this all the time. She just doesn't believe me. I'm like, babe, you could just ask it how many times Taylor Swift won Album of the Year, and it'll say 4 times. Probably gonna be 5 times this year, right? So what I'm saying is like you just put the question in and Google gives it to you. We all know how to do that. Every word you put in here, it's gonna search it as a tag. Okay, so you want to be careful. So I just put classism and I put ethics, and then I'm going to search that. Okay, now and adds or separates. So if you're searching two things that could be called one or the other, like medical marijuana or cannabis, capital punishment or death penalty, then you're widening your search. And narrows the search or widens the search. Not means I don't want this thing. Okay. So we have classism and ethics. Now just putting the and ethics puts us down to 13,551. So we're already better off. Now, the most important part of this is refining your results to these things that we call filters. So you'll see available on shelf. That means that's a physical book you have to come to the library and get. Well, realistically, you guys are going to be doing this at night at home by yourself. We're going to click available online. Okay.
Clean your mess.
So, we have available online. Another reason why we want to do available online is because these have to be peer-reviewed journal articles. We're not using books. We're not using magazines. Peer-reviewed journal articles. We talked about with Joy. Peer-reviewed means other people have verified the information, the article as valid, right? And so then we have kind of a confidence in the information in it. So you're going to put peer-reviewed journal articles. Then, okay. And you see, each time I build a filter, I get less stuff, right? And so as you're building the filters, click this lock thing here that says remember all filters. I've done this more than once, unfortunately, where I haven't saved my filters and then I navigate away from the page and you know, it winds up like wiping away my filters and I have to add them back on every time. So just put them on, okay? So available online, peer-reviewed journals. Availability, I like open access. Open access means there's no barriers between you and that information. You see, we lost more because sometimes it'll be like, here it is, but it's behind this firewall, or here's like an abstract of it, but we don't actually have the article. Open access means you can get right to it, no problem. Okay. I click that filter. Okay. Now, these are all still things you can add. So you can see this is this chipping away. But now we go down to resource type. Articles, because they have to be peer-reviewed articles. We don't want article reviews. We don't want conference papers. We don't want books, magazines, all that stuff. So now we sort it to articles, okay? And you see now every time we do this, we're just chipping away. Now we're not trying to get this down to one. It's not like the Holy Grail where we're looking for one perfect article. We're just trying to cut out the things that we know don't work, okay? Now, the last thing you'll see in the instructions of the paper, and we'll maybe talk about this more Monday, is it can only be in the last 5 years. I want to see what the current relevant topic, you know, the conversation of that topic is. So then on the creation date, we can set that 5-year length, which would be 2019 to 2024. And then we refine that search as well. So if all you remember are these filters, you know, write those down, take a picture, whatever you got to do. If you remember just those filters and how to do the advanced search, what we have here, without getting any more specific, is 769 articles that we know will kind of fit, okay, into classism and ethics. And then if you want, you can play around with other stuff, you know, classism, ethics. You can add more lines. Maybe we add in the idea of like exploitation, 172. You see, play around with the terms. Now, what I always tell people, me being a Zennial, a cusper between Gen X and Millennial, born in the late 20th century or whatever the hell you guys say, the late 1900s, you make me feel old. I play video games differently than you guys play video games. Okay, this is important. When I was a kid, you had the game and the controller, and you mashed buttons to figure out what happened, okay? You guys now get to go online, you get to watch streamers, you get to go to websites. I mean, rich kids had Nintendo Power Magazine, but we didn't have that, okay? We just ran around. This is why when I first time played Mario 3 and I accidentally hit the back button, which I say accident on purpose, I accidentally hit the back button, he turned and went the other way, and I freaked out. I called my friend George. I'm like, George, Mario goes backwards. He's like, no, he doesn't. I'm like, I'm telling you, he goes backwards. Because before, he didn't go backwards. Because Mario didn't actually move. The screen moved, and Mario went up and down. I only found that out because I was pushing buttons. Now, this is important. That button mashing mentality has followed me into how I use all technology. If it's clickable, it's because they want you to do something with it. Does this make sense? You're not going to break this. I promise you, there's nothing you can do to this that's going to break the site. So you can click and add, and you can add more filters. If it's clickable, they want you to click it and they want you to do something with it. Try it. You're not going to hurt it. This is why if you have all these locked in, the new filter doesn't do anything. You just get rid of it. Okay. You just click on the X and it'll get rid of the filter, but push the buttons and see what happens and figure out. So, okay. Reproductive justice for the haunted Nordic welfare state, racism, and queer bioethics in Finland. This sounds interesting. I'm gonna click on it. Okay, so you click on it. When you see view online, full text availability, this is all the different places that you can look at this particular. Don't get overwhelmed by it. These are just the different databases. Remember I told you you're searching all the databases at once. This just shows there's replication. So you click on one of them. I clicked EBSCO just because it's a bigger name that I recognize. Like EBSCO and Gale are like two of the biggest like brands of databases, I guess. So this gets us into EBSCO, and this is the article. You can print it, download it, whatever. What I like to do before you read this whole article to see if it's relevant, it's 9 pages. It's not long, but long enough if you don't want to use it. Read through the abstract first, right? See what it's about. Then I like to shoot down to the conclusion. Read through the conclusion. Why I like to go to the conclusion is in most papers, your conclusion, mine's gonna be a little bit different, but a lot of times the conclusion is like where you're summarizing the big ideas, right? So if you go to their summary of the big ideas and none of that seems relevant to your paper, maybe put that one aside, right? Read the abstract because that's a preview, think about a movie trailer. They give you a 2-hour movie preview and a 2-minute video. They don't tell you everything, but they get you excited. And then in the conclusion, they wrap up stuff. So read the abstract, read the conclusion. If it looks good, then I would go back to the discussion and read that part. But you got to remember, a lot of these articles, they're going to have, I like this one because it's got headings and you can jump right into your spot. Because remember, your whole article, you can have a 20-page article and only one paragraph of it is about your topic. And that's fine as long as you can get something out of that paragraph that works. Does that make sense? And so jump around and don't read the whole thing if you don't need to. Okay, so this has the little headings, which is kind of cool. Now sometimes they'll have like research methods and they'll have like data and all this stuff. Like you don't have to read that. That's only if you're interested in that. So like let's say they do a survey and they get a bunch of information and then they use that information to write the article. They're going to have all about like their survey and how they conducted it. And like, you don't need to read all that. Okay. That's just to show they did their work. Go to the discussion, see what they're saying about that information. Save yourself the trouble. Now, if you're in EBSCO, like let's say we like this article. If you're in EBSCO, everybody loves this. Most of the databases have it either across the top or down the side. But you see this little gold piece of paper here? When you click that, that brings up your citation format. And hopefully by now we all know that we're using APA. So this is the APA citation, okay? And then you copy this and you paste it and you put it in your reference page. You make sure it has a hanging indent. You make sure it's double spaced. People are missing those a lot. And then all you have to do here is match it up against my worksheet in the APA thing, make sure all the rules follow. This one looks pretty good. It has the names in the right, it has the date. The first word's capitalized, Nordic because that's a noun, is capitalized. Race is capitalized because it's after a colon, but you see how it's got all that. It's got the journal, volume issue, DOI. This is how I'm going to check your sources, right? I'm going to check that DOI and make sure they come up as correct from the database you all have access to and peer review. Okay. Now, if the database doesn't have the citation tool or you're having a hard time finding it, it's also on this landing page here. So remember, we went from the search. This is where we found the article. If you click citation, it also has your formats here. So we have the APA 7th edition, so you can copy this and post it. So like really, there's no excuse not to have something that at least resembles the citation because this thing just does it for you. I will just make sure you're following the rules, and that's where your points may or may not come, right? So just make sure. Okay, makes sense? Now, you like this article, you're going to go find more articles, but you don't want to lose this article. You see where there's this push pin here? You go ahead and you push that, and it like flutters away, and then you X out. When you scroll up here by your name, there'll be another push pin. And when you click that, that's your pinned list. And that's that article we just looked at. And so every time I do a demo, I pin an article so I can scroll through and show people that this is never going to leave until you unpin it. So don't lose your articles. Pin them. That way you can go back and forth to them and stuff. Now, classism, ethics, exploitation, right? So sometimes you can just change out the main topic and still use your other two filters, right? Hint. Yeah. And see if that works out. Make sense? Ooh, anti-fox hunting. Women novelists in the, this is one of the topics we're doing for the ethics bowl this year is about like fox hunting or whatever. But you see, so just play around with your terms, play around with what you're looking for. Maybe if one of the terms is making it too restricted, not much more. So there's not a ton on it that fits this, but you can still find one of these articles. You see, play around with the terms that you're searching, and you know, see what you get. So like maybe you see that there's like ethical egoism in your paper, and you want to talk about that. I won't say which book, but there's a couple of them, but there's one great book out there that's a perfect balance between egoism and like some utilitarianism, because it's like it's a specific thing. So somebody might get triggered here, but it's a specific thing where it's in your best interest to be self-centered, and yet inherently, intrinsically, people feel this drive to still look out for each other, help each other, like altruism. Like it would be in my benefit to be self-serving, and yet I still just have this desire to help others as well, even though it's at a detriment to me. So that could be a good discussion that you're having in your paper, right? And then some stuff you might have like abortion ethics, you might have environmental ethics. Just play around with the terms and see what you get. Make sense? Any questions on the research so far? You guys see how you find your articles, you pin your articles, you do your citations, right? And so if you haven't been using this module yet, now's a good time to get on it for this assignment in the paper. But if you go to the APA resources module and you go to the one that shows reference citation examples, you'll see right here, journal article from a database. So this is what the book says you should have. And I've highlighted the punctuation that you need to have. I've separated the different color coded. That's going to make sense in a minute. The author, date, the title, where you can find it. This is what a real world example looks like. And then if you roll down to the last page, this has the individual rules for each thing. What do you do when you have multiple authors? What do you do with the year? I'll tell you right now, if your resource has no date, don't use it. I can't verify that it's in the last 5 years if there's no date. But if you're sticking to peer-reviewed academic articles, you're gonna have dates. And then this talks about how to address the title of the work and then where you found it from. So really, there's no excuse to get this wrong at this point, other than you're just not putting any care into it. Because all you have to do is copy it from the database, paste it onto your reference page, and then just make sure that it's formatted correctly, and then you're good to go. Okay, so hopefully now that gets us to a point where we're more comfortable with that. So remember, here in the last couple minutes, I'll show you guys. So in course content, we are all the way back to critical thinking, decision making, evaluation. This one's due this evening. If you can't get it done this evening, you have to email me before the deadline, ask me for the extension. If not, I'm going to assume you're turning it in tonight. And the idea is to be proactive. It's not to forget about it and then tomorrow, after it's already due, come back, oh, can I get more time? Like, ask me ahead of time. Be proactive, okay? I'm trying to instill in you guys that a student thinks ahead, not just for my class, but for any class, right? It's that intent. When you show a professor good intent, that goes a long way, okay? So get that assignment done. If you have questions, I mean, we're working remote today. I'm going to be sitting at home. I don't have any appointments yet. So if you want to email me questions, I'll get to them as quick as I can. But just make sure we get it done, okay? And then you go to the critical book review for the one that's due next Friday, and you scroll down to the research outline. If you want to know more about the paper, you go to the paper one, because this talks about the paper itself. And this gives you more information. So if it helps you understand what the paper is going to be in the long run, then that's good too. Because you see, like right here where it talks about your quotes, your direct quotes should be 40 words or less. I don't want you taking huge chunks. Cut it down to like what you need. Okay. We'll talk about techniques for that maybe Monday. As we start class, I'll give you a few quoting techniques and citation techniques, but it tells you this is what your paper is going to be. And it looks like a lot, but since you guys aren't literature majors and you haven't been into, lit class yet, I've literally kind of shown you sentence by sentence what you have to write. So what I'm teaching you here is as you move on in your life, this is what a college paper, an analysis paper is going to look like. Doesn't matter if it's psychology, sociology, or literature. This is how you layer in research with examples and write an awesome paper. My first 9 years at the college, I was a writing tutor. So I've seen all these things that students struggle with writing. And now I have the opportunity to add that as a benefit to my course to like teach you guys out of a skill that I have, something that I know that you're going to be required to do, but you're not always going to get taught by somebody because sometimes it falls through the cracks. It's like some classes, like you go to psychology, it's not their job to teach you to write a paper. Like technically it's not my job as an ethics teacher to teach you how to write a paper. You're supposed to know, but it's weird because a lot of you are in Comp 1 right now, or maybe not even had it yet because it's not a requirement. So I'm like, how can I have them write a paper and not teach them how to write a paper? So it looks like a lot, but if you follow it line by line, this is like probably a junior level lit paper, which is going to be scary to a lot of you guys, but I'll tell you, I've been doing it like this for over a year. And actually the papers that have come out have been like very good. And even the people who were like very nervous have done really well with this if you just follow the example that I gave. Does that make sense? And then what you'll do is, and be thinking about this coincidingly, what the final project is. And maybe we'll touch on that a little bit Monday too. The final project is a visual media presentation of these 3 points in the research. You can do a PowerPoint, you can do some sort of Canva presentation, you can make a brochure, you can do a YouTube video, really anything you want. A visual, I had a girl last year do a Lego diorama. It was really cool actually, right? It was like a scene from like one of the books. I won't say which one because I don't want to influence anybody. But like, I told her, she's like, how do I present it? I said, you bring it to class and you talk about how your 3 points are represented in this visual scene thing. And she did it and did very well with it. So the idea is you're creating a thing that you can show people, okay? And it talks about your research in. What's really cool about this and why I do both, and I know I'm going a little long here, so just give me one more minute. And I appreciate you guys hanging in. Some people are going to do really great at the paper and they're nervous about the visual. Some people are going to do poorly on the paper and they're going to do awesome on the visual because people have different skills. And I want to honor that as much as I can. And it balances out. So they're both worth 100 points. So this way one can balance the other. You know what I mean? If you're more of like, because I'll be honest with you, some of the best projects I get came from some of the worst papers. And it's just, it is what it is. And I don't mean that to be rude. It's just the person wasn't a good writer, but they know how to work a video camera and editing stuff. You know what I mean? You don't have to go crazy elaborate with it. The majority of you are probably just going to do PowerPoints, which is fine as long as it's a good PowerPoint. Because I'll tell you right now, just going and getting, 7 or 8 pictures from the movie and putting them on your PowerPoint and dumping your stuff on there, that's not, it has to be creative and unique and inventive. And then you're going to present it to the class, in like a 5 to 7 minute, I think, or whatever it is, 3 to 5 minute. I can't remember. I'll look it up. We'll talk more about it, but like you present to the class, so we can see what your paper's about. That's it. Okay. I'm good now. We'll catch up a little bit more of the stuff Monday. Just get your assignments in tonight. We'll start kind of fresh back where we were, next week. I think we should be fine if we just move forward like this. if anybody has any questions, you can hang back. I'll stay on a few more minutes. If not, you guys can take off. Have a good weekend. Hopefully everybody's safe and their houses are back to normal, and hopefully everybody's family's in a good place. Like I know this was a crazy time for all of us. I'm very excited about how many people made it to class this morning. I didn't know how many were gonna be able to do that, so that's a great sign. Where's is Eli and I know you're here. If David's here, hang back 2 seconds. And Andy, if she's here, I just want to say something about ethics thing real quick. But everybody else, take off if you need to, hang back if you have a question. Be safe over the weekend. I'll see you guys Monday, okay?
All right. See you guys Monday. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
All right. I don't know if Andy made it, but Davey and Eli, I don't know if you saw the message from Sydney, but we're gonna do a Zoom tonight. I think she said you did. I don't know if you saw it for our meeting. Since we haven't met in a couple weeks and the competition's like in a month, we'll meet tonight via Zoom if you guys are available. I'll send that link out. If you're not available, that's fine, but I'll email you guys to your email a link, and if you can join. If not, no big deal.
I'll probably just be a little late, but that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think she said like 6:30 or something, but
Yeah.
are you coming? Are you singing, Eli?
Okay, well, I'm not singing this time, thank you very much. But I have a volleyball game. It's our senior night, so I'm
How
gonna
was
sing.
that? How was I supposed to know you weren't singing?
Okay, well, I just pointed out,
All right.
mentioning.
She's like,
Those-
I'm multi-talented. Okay. Well, all right, well, that's fine.
I'm just working.
What we'll have to do tonight, we just have to make sure like the cases are divided. We kind of talked about that, but we have to like get going like that way.
Is all 6 of us gonna be there, or is it just gonna be the normal, like, 4 to 3 of us?
I don't know. I haven't heard from everybody yet, but me, Sydney, you, we gotta try to get a hold of Andy. Gabe's usually available Wednesdays, so we'll see. Nick will go.
I texted Sydney last night because I was like, hey, are we doing anything?
Yeah, I just thought about last night. I talked with Sydney because I was just like, we should probably do this. She's like, yeah, so that way we can get it sorted out. At some point, we're gonna have to figure out a way, even if it's a different day, to a day where we can get, as we get closer, get the whole team together in one time, and then make sure, but we'll figure that out as we go. We still got time. I just didn't want to like waste another, week. So like this way we can kind of give you guys all stuff to work on over the weekends and get going. But we've mostly discussed them. Now it's just putting the arguments together. So
Because
cool.
did we go through every single one of those cases yet? I don't feel like we have.
There's
but we
like
might
there's
have.
like 2 we haven't, but we're probably spending too much time going through 'em, like individually. There's like 2 left we have to do, which we can do, but we'll have to be quicker. Like one is like
I mean, we have like a month left, don't we?
yeah, but the idea is we want
Yeah.
we got to get the things together and then we got to get practice. And so like I want to spend the last 2.5 weeks just running through them, over and over and over, so you're confident with them. But because the problem we had last year is when we got there, the first time people had said their case was the morning before we left, so like we weren't super confident. Like, so I want to try to make sure we're prepared. But yeah, so we got time, so it's like we're not up against it. You know what I mean? We just want to
Yeah.
make sure we're getting there. But I think the only 2 we haven't done, we could talk about them tonight, is one of them might be one of yours. I think it's like the treaties one, and then like the parking lot thing. But
Mm.
I think Maddie's gonna be there. Allegedly.
Oh,
Have you
allegedly.
seen it?
I've
Have you seen
never
it
met
yet?
her, but I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures,
She's
and we made her
been
do a
there,
ransom
like-
photo.
She just
Maddie?
comes like 2 business hours, like 2 business days late. Like she's there though. She's there.
She is.
I think I'm the only person that's never seen her, and I made Sydney take a picture like next to a clock and with her holding 3 fingers. That's why she was real.
I heard this
Okay.
thing. I heard this thing on TikTok. This girl was talking about time blindness and was trying to act like that's a real thing, and I was like, "No way!" And then I met Madney, and I'm like, maybe."
Maybe
Because
it's real.
Even when
think
she was
I
in my
saw-
class, she was a half hour late every day,
Oh,
like unbothered. You know, like how some people run in like late and they look, oh, I'm so sorry. Like how she sat right in front. She would just kind of stroll in, sit down, and just kind of pull out her nose and get going. But like it works for her because at least like, you know, Eli will tell you, like, she'll show up an hour late, she'll sit there, and then she'll just drop like a wisdom bomb, like real quick, you know what I mean? And then just like,
Mhm.
so it's like, ah, well, when she's here, she contributes, but she kind of just, you know, floats along. But she'll
I've
be
heard
ready
the
when it is.
stories. I can't wait to see it. I want to see it
Yeah,
real time.
it exists.
I
So
don't know. Not believing it. Not believing it till I see it.
You've had like photo evidence, like you have.
Care. Honestly, everybody's hyping this girl up so much. I have to see her. I have to meet her.
you have to meet her, and you've missed twice on Mondays.
I
'Cause-
know. I like missed her twice because like I would be there for like 45
Well,
minutes, but then I'd have to go to tutoring, so then I would miss her.
You've also missed the 2 times where like Dean Demers, like my boss, just strolled in, said like the most like
Oh.
smartest shit you've ever heard. Oh, I'm still on recording, and just like said like the smartest things that you ever heard, and then like left. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
like
she was there for like 20 minutes when I was